My students are terrified of Shakespeare until they learn this. In this video, I'm going to save you hundreds of hours of frustration and help you build the skills and confidence to understand Shakespeare, because unfortunately, your English teacher has made it way too hard for you to understand what Shakespeare is talking about. Being a 15-year high school English teacher, I get it. I've made these mistakes before, and although well-meaning, the 3 methods that your teacher is helping you understand Shakespeare just don't work. Sharing the hardest words doesn't work. If thou canst nod, speak too. If charnel houses and graves must what? Oh, charnel houses are buildings containing bones of the dead. Yeah, Mr. Wiskin, I don't get it. Watching a video doesn't work.
Is this a dagger which I see before me? The handle toward my hand comes.
Mr. Wiskin, there's no dagger. I really don't understand. Previewing the text with SparkNotes or some other website doesn't work as well. Thy bones are marrowless, thy blood is cold, thou hast no speculation in those eyes. I don't think that was in the SparkNotes. If your teacher has done all of this and you're still feeling hopeless and frustrated, then what does work? Easy. In this video, I'm going to give you the 3 strategies that makes understanding William Shakespeare easier than you could ever imagine. And stick around to the end where I share a final bonus tip which explains why Shakespeare does sound a little bit odd, even if you understand all the words. So let's dive in. Now, this first method is the easiest and actually the most helpful. What is it? It's really just understanding the most common words. Just like if you were learning the English language, just looking at this graph, you can see what are the most common words in the English language. If you know these words, you're going to be able to speak English. Now look at this graph, you can see here that Shakespeare's word usage is also really skewed to a few simple words. If you get the words that appear 30, 40, 50, hundreds of times and you understand those, you're going to understand Shakespeare. If you know that art actually means are, like how are you doing? Doth simply means does. That appears 37 times in the text. Hast or hath is has or have, but that pales into comparison with 459 times with thee, thou, thy, thine, which is more or less you, yours, they, or theirs. Tis, just simply Shakespeare has gotten rid of the I at the beginning, means it is, which therefore means twere, and twas means it were and it was. Oftentimes as well, Shakespeare uses ETH at the endings of words, which just actually means the word plus S or ED. So walketh or runneth means walks or runs, or same thing with ST endings. You can often get rid of them and the word will still make sense. So Shakespeare uses old words, get used to it, and you'll be understanding Shakespeare in no time. This second strategy is going to prove that Shakespeare, yes, does in fact write in full sentences. Shocking, I know. And once you understand this, you're well on your way to understanding Shakespeare. He has 2 ways of writing, one being verse, which is fancy writing that scares people, and that means the sentence does not go to the end of the page. Or he writes in prose, which is normal writing where the sentence goes to the end of the page, like a book. If we take a look at this right here, we notice all these sentences go to the end of the page, looks like a paragraph. We have prose. The challenging writing that scares high school students is this, where the lines don't go to the end of the page. What you have to realize is that for Shakespeare's use of verse, is they think that every line is a sentence, but it's not. Shakespeare does use full sentences, and the reason why he uses verse is he has to write in a way called iambic pentameter, or 5 iambs per line. An iamb is just simply the dumb sound, a stressed and an unstressed syllable. 5 iambs per line will give you 10 syllables per line. So if we went back to this example here, all the infections that the sun sucks up, 10. From bogs, fens, flats, on prosper, fall and make him. 10. By Inchmeal a disease. His spirits hear me. 10. Shakespeare does use full sentences. He just breaks up those sentences into 10-syllable lines. What that means is you have to pay attention to punctuation, particularly the 3 ways that we end sentences, periods, exclamation marks, question marks, or if the passage is still too long, look for colons and semicolons, but never use commas. Don't worry about commas, completely ignore them. Why? Because they are too common. So now we have 2 ways to understand Shakespeare. Now, you're not going to want to miss this last strategy because it puts everything together and will help you understand Shakespeare. So what does putting it all together mean? It means that if you're going to translate Shakespeare, you have to look for the 2 things that we focused on. And in this case here, you notice I highlighted all the punctuation, the question marks, colons, semicolons. So instead of having like large chunks of 20 lines, we've broken it up into smaller, more manageable chunks. What else you'll notice is I underlined each of the old words. Art, thou, thy, thou, wilt, tis, thy, that, like all of those. If you can find those words and translate them, then it becomes a lot easier to understand Shakespeare. Wherefore, I didn't get into this one, but that actually means why. So why, we know that art means are, thou simply means you, and deny, thy means your. We can fix that, or if thou, we already know thou means you. Wilt, we could just change the last letter, means will. And instead of Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name. We have, oh, Romeo, Romeo, why are you Romeo? Deny your father and refuse your name. Or if you will not, be but sworn, my love, and I'll no longer be a Capulet. So much easier to understand. I'll quickly do the other ones so you don't have to watch me translate. There we go. I changed them all over here. And on the right side, I actually have a translation that one of my students who had never studied Shakespeare before and was nervous about it, translated it. All they did was they found the passages or the sentences and they just changed the old words to new ones. So instead of, again, looking at a large chunk like this, which is intimidating, we broke it up. Let's look at the first sentence. Is your name that is my enemy? Well, that's easy to understand. And again, instead of thou art thyself, it's like, no, you are yourself, though not a Montague. Again, look at this. What's Montague? Just a simple question. Then this next passage is just 2 lines. It is nor hand, nor foot, nor arm, nor face, nor any other part belonging to a man, which basically they translated, a Montague is not an important part of the body, so choose a different name, which is, oh, be some other name. So if you can take those 2 ideas that translate the really common words, the thee, thou, thine, doth, art, and go sentence by sentence, you can easily translate any passage within Shakespeare. If this video has added any value to your high school English life, please consider giving a subscribe below. It would be the highlight of my teaching career. Now let's dive back in. So now we come to this bonus tip. Even if you understand all the words, Shakespeare still does sound a little bit odd. The reason is because our use of speaking goes subject, verb, object, meaning something like Romeo is in love with Juliet. The difference is Shakespeare will take that SVO pattern and flip it around a bit. The first example would be OSV. Benvolio starts by saying something like this at the very beginning of his talk with Montague, towards him I made, which is really weird. It really should read, I made towards him, or I walked towards him. The second example is a VSO pattern, which again is weird because it starts with the verb. In that same conversation, Benvolio says, so early walking did I see your son. It really should read, I saw your son walking in the morning. And in the last or third example, Shakespeare might often use an SOV pattern where he just flips the object and the verb. In this one, Montague says, many a morning hath he there been seen, which again sounds really weird. So if Shakespeare does still seem a little bit weird even after all of that, it's probably because the subject, verb, and object is in the wrong order. And once you get used to that, 90s and 100s are going to be in your immediate Shakespeare future. If you've struggled with understanding Shakespeare's writing, you may also struggle with Shakespearean tests. And if that's the case, click on this video here where I'll help you use ChatGPT legally to make endless tests so that you get those 90s and 100s that you deserve. Take care. I'll see you in the next one.